Okay, get back to the beginning. Page 1. I had to go all the way to the end to check to make sure that the video was working, and it was, so hopefully it'll still work when we get there. Okay.
What's now? Did it freeze or was I just one? Did it freeze before? Because
I lost her.
yeah, Tamar, and the picture frozen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
hers probably, yeah. It says joining, so she'll probably be back in a minute.
I have a question. It's gonna be it's different from the last time that we
The
had.
exam, yes.
It would be different.
Yeah, it's 18
Not the
multiple
same.
choice questions and then one short answer question.
Okay,
And-
got it. Thanks.
Is the short answer similar to a case study, just so we know if it's the same type of mindset, or is it something completely different?
The short answer, I will check. I don't remember because there is, so the first 8 questions are just general questions about the topic. Then the next 10 questions are based on a case study, which are also multiple choice. And then the last part, which is a short answer question, I need to check because I do not remember. If you give me a moment, I'll check.
Where's Dean?
Yeah, so it's based on the case study.
Okay.
Lakini mangokuna vraiment. Oh. Ego connected.
So if it's only 18 quizzes and we have 2 hours, that shouldn't be a problem. It's 80 or 65? Before somebody told me it's 65 questions.
How's everyone doing?
Yeah. We're okay after all.
Good.
I don't understand. They said it's like it's 80%. If you have an 80% attendance, you'll be able to pass. I don't understand. Why do we have to go back? Why do we need to redo revision something like that? It's
I don't know. I don't understand
like,
it either.
if we fail, we fail. Then we move on, right? Why do we need to go back? Why do we need to redo it?
I don't know.
They want us
It's
to
something you
pass.
have to talk to Tammy and Tamar about.
It's because they want us to pass.
Erin, I'm shocked you did not pass.
I've never done
Yeah,
case
me
studies
too.
before. A lot of the stuff, I have 2 certificates in this area, but case studies, observations, things like that were never required in any of the places I worked. So these things are new for me. I didn't do great on the observation either. I did good. Like I passed or whatever. I know it wasn't really graded, but it wasn't like amazing. I didn't have to ever do
I
this
thought this
before.
case study exam, it's an own opinion. So I didn't expect that we we're going to fail, you know. It doesn't
Yeah, I
because
did.
it's our own opinion. So I don't know
Hi,
how they,
guys. Welcome
Yeah.
back. And I
I
can
have to
address
say,
yeah.
that.
I have to say that I don't know if it was the last class or the class before where we did that huge review of how to answer case studies questions would have been great before given the
Yeah.
I was just gonna
Yes.
say, yeah.
It would have been great. And that was one of the things that I said to Sammy. I said, I think it's my fault. I think we should have had that face to face before we asked them to do a case study.
It
Yes.
would have been
And
so helpful. Yeah, absolutely. I
right? Yeah.
after having that class and then getting my paper back, I was like, oh, this makes sense. I totally see how I
Yeah.
could have answered these questions better or a little differently or whatever, more information geared specifically towards what we needed.
Yeah,
So
it is. It is. And it's also depending on what you're providing a case study for. These are generic case studies. There are case studies that are specific to a particular behavior type. They are specific to trying to understand the beginning of the diagnostic process. And so they might ask you to pay attention to a particular time. But to the question that I popped, or the comment that I popped in on, which was that their opinions, case studies are not opinions at all. They're not opinions. There are no opinions in a case study. It is what you see and how you interpret it. And interpreting things in a scientific way or under the umbrella of either EYFS or under a different pedagogy that you're working within. So they are somewhat flexible only when you're deciding what lens you're going to be viewing it through. So, okay, let's see if I can do this again without crashing my computer. I closed out WhatsApp, so hopefully that will help. WhatsApp likes to crash my computer for some reason. So let's move on. Share. Oh, here it is. And share. And present. Here we go. Oh, looks like it's gonna work. Yay! Okay. So we are doing a
husband's
recap.
joining for just a sec to help with IT issue.
Okay. So do we need to press pause for a quick second?
Nope, we're good. He fixed it in 2 seconds. Thank you very much. All right, bye, honey.
Yay! Okay, thanks, honey.
Close the door, sweetheart. I love you. Bye.
All right, moving. So we're going to start with a recap of sensory perception development. Is the interpretation of what is sensed with the eyes, the ears, the nose, the mouth, and it says hand, but that is all of the epidermis, all of your skin. Eyes and nose. Some of this is going to be a review from the face to face, and everything that is presented here is pulled out of the sensory motor development and atypical development. So none of this is new information, unless, of course, you dozed off in the middle of one of my very boring lectures, which is perfectly understandable. But we all know what our organs are in our body that we use to perceive the world. The sensory organs for the mouth is limited at birth. So it's limited taste. And this is what I found fascinating because I did a little bit of Google to add additional information. And it peaks at about age 30. And taste is flexible. It's tied to the nose and can change based on injury. So if you have an injury to the tongue, a burn, a cut, that can change your ability to taste, and it can change the way you do taste. Also, we now know that having a virus can change your sense of taste. I had COVID, and before COVID, I could not stand the taste of coffee. After COVID, I like coffee. I know someone else who they loved chocolate before COVID, and then chocolate after COVID tasted rancid to them. So that is something that is a little bit flexible, and we really don't understand how and why that happened for some people. Hearing is fully functional at birth. If you remember back to the face to face, I was sharing with you information that babies cry in a cadence. So German babies have a different cadence from French speaking babies. So those ears are fully functional at birth. The skin is developed at birth. The sense of touch is developed at birth. However, it is not cognitively integrated into the sensory processing system because it is something that the brain has to then make connections to. So that is something that, of course, we're all born with full skin on covering our bodies, but the brain's ability to interpret that information is limited at birth. Eyes are limited at birth and they slowly develop, and the vision development peaks at about age 3 to 5. And the nose is functional at birth, but just like the sense of touch, it gets integrated within that first year. So the majority of the development happens in that first year, but then there is some fine tuning and refinement that happens later on in life. Typical sensory development, you might remember this from the face-to-face. Sensory exploration, infants use their senses to explore and make sense of the world around them. They touch, taste, smell, and look and listen to objects and stimuli, and they taste everything. Everything goes in their mouth. They want to touch and feel everything and pull things apart and look inside and see how things get put together. And that is all part of that sensory exploration. And the next part of that is that integration. That's where the brain gradually organizes and integrates the sensory input from different senses. It allows children to understand and respond appropriately to sensory information and stimuli. And this is where, when it starts to integrate, this is where we can see some atypical developments beginning to occur. Sensory discrimination.
Sorry to interrupt. None of us can see anything on our screens.
Oh,
It just has the text. Samara has started sharing. There's nothing there.
I'm so
I thought it was
sorry.
only mine, actually.
Oh, okay.
I can see like the 5 senses and recap of sensory perception. Is that what you're
So do
showing?
I. That's all I
So
see.
now
I
do you
don't have
see
that
Same
at all.
thing.
do you see the
We're
first
gonna make a
page?
notes.
Oh my God, I thought it's my signal again.
No,
Ah!
it's like starting.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you see the first page?
I personally just have a black screen with white text that says Tamara
Yeah,
has
me
started
too.
screen sharing.
Me too.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, let's go back and try it again then. Let me end the screen share and see if I can re-establish that. Okay, go back. Okay. Hi. All right, let's try this again. And share. Okay, what do you see now?
Now it's black.
No, I don't see it.
It's still the same.
I don't see anything.
I saw before.
Okay, so I just got a message from Priscilla. She's saying that she sees the first screen. That's very strange.
That's what was showing to me.
Oh, that's what
time.
was showing to you.
Yeah.
So I'm not.
Mine is empty. Nothing. It's black.
No, right now I don't see anything.
Huh. I'm going to close out everything except for Zoom and the stop screen share. Oops, something went wrong.
Mhm.
Here we go.
Will we be able to get some copy of the slides after?
Yes, you will have copies of the slides after. So that's not going to be an issue.
I'm gonna upload it onto Moodle.
Yes, they will be uploaded into Moodle. I'm going to try this again. Okay, did it work?
No, I don't see it.
Nope.
Ah, very strange. Okay. Maytal, do you have any suggestions?
Maybe somebody else can share it. I don't know.
They have to be the host to be able to share, and they have to have.
No, I don't think so.
I can try maybe.
Okay.
I'm
Because
here,
you have
I'm here.
you have the PDF version. You don't have the interactive version, so maybe that one will share better. I can
Is
also
that better?
open my PDF. I can open up my PDF version too.
Let's see. 1 second. Share screen.
Wow, this is quite an adventure we're having tonight.
I think if we will gonna have these slides after, so we can continue already, because here it's already 12 o'clock.
Yeah.
I
Mara,
think it's a
maybe
good
try
idea
again.
because we're
Try
going to
again
have the
share.
copy of the slides anyway. So
Maybe
maybe we
try
can
again
move
to share
on.
your screen.
Yeah,
Okay.
we can move on.
I'm going to try and share the PDF version and see if that works better. Can you see the first slide that says sensory recap?
No.
No,
No.
no.
Yeah.
I can see nothing. It's no coming.
Well, I'm not sure how to fix. So I can go through the slides. I can give you the information. You will have the slides. And we are recording this. Yes, Maytal?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
we are recording it. So you will be able to have the recording. I don't know if the slides will show up on the recording, but you will have my voice, and I am telling you every time I'm changing the slides so that you will be able to see them as you go through. So, so back to the recap is the perception is the interpretation of what is sensed, and we have our 5 senses. And we went through the 5 senses, and then I was at the sensory discrimination part of the typical sensory development 1. And children learn to distinguish and identify different sensory stimuli. This is after they've integrated the ability to sense information, and then they start to discriminate for it. And they can tell the difference between taste, textures, smells, sounds, and visual stimuli. Typical sensory development is with sensory modulation. Children develop the ability to regulate their responses to sensory input, how they react to something that they touch, something that they see. They can have sensitivities to bright lights until they get used to going in and out of a light and dark room. They may not make that transition easily. With visual sensory modulation, some people, they do have a sensory processing, and if you have strobe lights, it actually causes their brain to shut down and have a seizure. So that modulation can typically goes in, and it then integrates into the into their neural pathways, and they're able to make sense and regulate their physiological and emotional response to the stimuli. And they can adapt to different sensory environments and adjust their reactions accordingly. Sometimes the sensory reaction isn't necessarily based on what they are feeling with their senses. It can be based on the environment that they're in. So if they have not had exposure to a particular sensation, then it might take them a little while to integrate that just as all of us as people who have immigrated into Israel have had to get used to the sounds and the smells and what it feels like when you go to the beach and what the air feels like, the hot and the very mild cold of Tel Aviv. So it also depends on how much you're exposed to something. And everyone, children and adults, we all have sensory preferences. So children may display preferences for certain sensory experiences. If it becomes excessive for avoiding or seeking, that would be atypical. They might seek out or avoid certain sensations. They might seek deep pressure, or they might avoid loud noises. Those are preferences, and it becomes a atypical development when it interferes with everyday living. The way to help with sensory integration is to engage in sensory rich activities such as playing with sand, water, different textures, cornstarch if you would like to torture them. Just kidding. Just kidding. I'm the only one that doesn't like cornstarch. I know that. It helps children refine and it helps children explore and refine their sensory processing abilities, because as they have experiences with different things, then they then integrate that into their system, and they can decide whether or not they like something or they don't like something. They can have a negative experience around something and decide that they don't like it. So if they are in an environment that is not supportive, or where they feel nervous and they are then they have a sensory experience that they're uncomfortable with, if they lack the support in working through that discomfort, then that can change the way that they react to the stimuli. And it's not based on just what they're actually feeling in their body. It is more of an emotional reaction. And sensory play supports brain development and enhances memory. Many people can remember what a particular smell is. For me, coming from the United States, I know what snow smells like. And it is a very interesting smell. It's very specific. And so when I smell, and I have this smell, then it just takes me back. And then I also start having all of these emotional responses because I love snow. So that's one that is very specific to me. And I would like to invite anyone else to share something that is very specific for them, that when they have a sensory experience that takes them to a different place that they remember.
I think for me, it's not the snow or something like that, but I don't like chocolate. So if I smell chocolate, I don't know. I don't know. I can't. So I think that one is for me.
Oh, so you're one of the people that, yeah, I have my sister and my son do not like chocolate. So I totally get that. Is there anything else where something that you've experienced in your environment? For me, I know what South Africa hot feels like. I know and it's very different from Israeli hot. Well, and we have somebody who's in the Philippines. The hot there, Cheryl, probably is very different than the hot here. Yes.
Yes, it's humid when it's
Yes.
summertime.
Oh, so
Yeah.
you're used
It's
to it in
sticky,
Tel Aviv.
like it's sticky. It's not really comfortable. You need to take a shower 3 times because in our country, most of the people doesn't have air condition,
So
so it's quite
that's a different
uncomfortable.
experience. Yeah. Yeah. That's a very different experience. And do you find it easy to go back and forth between those two environments and have those sensory experiences? Do you find that after you've been out of it for a little while that you go back and it feels more difficult to integrate into it?
It's quite difficult, but I manage.
Yes. Well, of course, there's other, but you also have in and around that difficulty. I am assuming that there are other positive sensory experiences that you're having. Maybe the smell of food from home, or
And yes,
yeah.
and during rainy season, we can take a shower on the under the rain. We play under the rain actually. It's a great experience.
Oh, that's an
It's not so
amazing,
cold. It's
yeah,
not
that's
so
an
cold.
amazing
It's
experience.
fun. It's a
Yeah.
fun experience.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. I love that. Okay, so let's move on a little bit here from,
Tamara,
yeah.
can you just let me know if I'm on the right slide?
We are at the the one that says sensory play, and then the one after that is the sensory development 3 slide.
This one?
Forward.
This one?
It is slide 6, I think.
You're in slide 6. Here.
I think so.
Okay.
Nope, slide 7. I lied. Slide 7. Slide 7. Amazing. Thanks, Maytal.
You're welcome.
Okay. So, the sensory milestones are age related, as with all milestones, such as tracking objects and with the eyes, responding to sounds, and reaching for objects. I'm sure you remember being in the face to face where you had to chart all those out with eyes and ears and when things develop in during particular time periods. This information is important in so much as when you're tracking development, knowing what is typical within an age range is important. It's not, and I think I said this in the face to face, it's not necessarily so important to be able to know the exact age range that something is going to have. Being able to be about that age range. And when you have experience with different children, you'll be able to do that a lot easier if you haven't had a lot of children come and go in and out of your care. There are people with sensory sensitivities. Some children might be more or less sensitive to certain sensory stimuli, a tag in the back of the shirt. They might have a heightened reaction or seek more or less input than their peers. I have shared very openly that for me, when I'm feeling nervous, I like to have long sleeves on. So when I am presenting publicly, I feel much more confident when I have sleeves on. I need to have that sensory stimuli because what's going on inside of me feels calmer when I have stimuli on the outside of me. And so that's also important to remember that some children may have those reactions. They may just need to have a little bit more input in a different direction. And sensory development varies among children, and each child has their own unique sensory profile. Factors like genetics, environment, experiences influence the sensory development. So that is really important to take into consideration when we're talking about what is typical for sensory development, because if there hasn't been exposure, they may have a different reaction to sensory stimuli. Remembering back to the face to face when I talked about the study where they blinded kittens and they never developed the neural pathways to be able to see. So even though the eyes worked, the brain did not know how to interpret that stimuli to be able to see. And we talked quite a bit about this with depth perception. And when you don't have that stimuli, then it makes it very difficult. If you don't have auditory stimuli, it can make it very difficult to be able to discern between certain sounds because that information has just not been put into the brain for the brain to be able to understand. And we do know this is very important by having a sensory rich environment, just like a language rich environment, is when we've looked at orphans that have come from Russia and they've been kept in their little tiny cages, their little tiny cribs, and they have been sensory deprived. And so their central nervous system hasn't learned to little by little regulate with really good responsive care. And it is even true for adults that are in prison and they are kept in solitary confinement. That is considered cruel and unusual punishment because it disrupts sensory integration because it is something like it's like a muscle. If you don't practice it, it gets lost and you can become hypersensitive. And you can have also a negative experience, again, a negative experience that can then impact your desire to have a certain sensory experience. And the next slide, moving on, unless we have any questions. If I'm going too fast, please, please, please stop me. I just want to be very mindful of your time, and we started late. So the next slide is the EYFS, Early Years Foundation and Stages. You have that available to you. So this is where we're going to look at the ages and stages and what to expect at a particular time. The ASQ3 is a medical version of its comprehensive screening tool and it is mostly for medical and school personnel. However, we are early childhood professionals, and there's no reason why we can't also take a look at the ASQ3. Next one is now we have three different ways that we can respond to sensory stimuli. We have modulation, discrimination, and movement. So we're going to explore those a little bit more deeply. The modulation is avoiding, seeking, or low registration. And I have the picture here because it can be very disorganized or it can be very organized depending on how you are having the experience, how you see this picture. I see something different inside of this picture. So it seems very organized to me, but that might not be true to somebody else. And so it's why I use this one for modulation. And we can have people who avoid certain experiences, people who seek out certain experiences, and then some people who don't respond to certain experiences, and that's that low registration. I think it was in this group that we were talking about all the medical drama shows, and there's invariably one where there's a child that comes in and she's all the one that I'm thinking of is she's like all bruised up on her belly and they can't figure out what's going on with her. Her parents have been referred out to Child Protective Services. And as it turns out, she just had low registration when it came to having the sensory stimuli. Maytal, next screen, please. Sorry. There it is, this one, that low registration. So there is that woggly picture that I was talking about before, hopefully giving a visual cue for that. So with modulation, it's avoiding, seeking, and low registration. And now comes your participation of the evening again. I would like someone to volunteer. Do they have a child who avoids or seeks or doesn't seem to respond to stimuli? Anyone?
Like getting hurt or something like that?
Yes, where they don't seem to respond to getting hurt. That would be low registration.
Okay, so I have one in our gun. Actually, my my boss, they're trying to speak more with the parents because we can see that he has we can see some like signals, okay, that maybe is there something.
Mm-hmm.
So he's all the time hitting everyone and biting everyone. And then, of course, the other children, they answer. And
Right.
he doesn't seem to care.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he doesn't cry. He doesn't do anything. He falls. He doesn't cry. And I think that his way of playing is like just going, hitting everyone and laughing. You know, it's like sometimes it's a little bit creepy.
Yeah.
And it's also scary. Like, it's scary for us because he falls and he acts like nothing happened. Like nothing.
Yeah, that would be low registration. And so sometimes when a child does actively hit and you remind them gentle hands or you say biting hurts, it hurts when you bite your friends, and you say that and they don't understand because they're not able to understand what it means to hurt. And so this word hurt means nothing to them because they don't have a reference point to it. So when we are talking with children and they are crying because they've been injured, it's helpful if we give them that vocabulary. Oh, I see, you fell down and your knee is skinned and it's bleeding a little bit. It hurts when you fall down. I hear you. Yeah, it does. It hurts. Come, let's get some cool water. And you then co-regulate them through this idea of experiencing pain. We're not taking away the pain. We are supporting them in co-regulating the ability to function with a little bit of pain. And some people have very high pain tolerance, and some people have a very low pain tolerance.
Tamara,
Yeah.
can it change from low registration to high sensitivity? I mean, if they're like, when they're very small, they have low registration, and then when they grow older, it turns to high sensitivity.
So when it becomes high sensitivity, that means that becomes avoiding. So they are avoiding sensitivity.
Mm.
So it could be that they are more sensitive, but
Yeah,
and
but can it switch from the two opposites? You know,
the opposite of low registration is avoiding, because
like
they
the
have a
bottom.
strong reaction, and so then they avoid it.
All right. Okay.
I
Okay.
think that what she was asking is that like if it can go like from one extreme to the other one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It can absolutely, and that can happen based on an emotional experience. It can happen because of an injury. There's a lot of reasons that would change the way a person modulates their sensory experiences.
Okay.
So absolutely, absolutely. Okay, next slide, please, Maytal. Maytal's like Vanna White, if you get the reference for Vanna White. Okay, so when we're talking about discrimination, we have discrimination within these areas of our sensory experience. Visual, that's something that we do. Most people, we are all sighted people, so we are able to understand what it means to go outside. When you've been in a movie theater and then you step outside and it's very bright, it can hurt the eyes until your pupils regulate and they shrink back down. And we know that if we close our eyes and we take a deep breath, that our eyes, we can modulate our experience. We are able to calm ourselves down until the sensory experience passes and our mind is able to catch up with that. When there is something very loud, then and it startles our system. Also, auditory can be particular sounds. We all right now have a auditory sensitivity, and it's startling, and if you hear the sound and you're not expecting, it can be very startling to you. And that comes with, and it can be a loud bang, and it might startle us, but the sound of a siren, it takes us to a completely different space. If we heard that sound outside of our country, our bodies would probably still react to that. That is a big reaction to auditory stimuli that has been programmed based on an experience. Taste and smell. These ones, being able to taste and smell, I used the example earlier with the coffee, and being now enjoying the smell of coffee where I didn't. And so my discrimination changed what I wanted to have. Tactile discrimination is this one can show up with the inability to manipulate buttons or pencils. That can be within the tactile system. I'm doing this with my fingers because that's what I'm thinking about is with fingers, but it can also be a tag inside of a shirt that a child is just completely distracted by because the tag is very annoying to them and is very sensitive for them. Or even, and I chose the picture of socks because a bump in the sock is often one that parents talk about. Oh my gosh, the seam of the sock has to be just right, or they're very uncomfortable, or they cry, or it has to be on. Some people have very sensitive feet. And with that sensitivity for feet, if you're not able to discriminate and interpret that information on your feet, you may not understand when you are standing on the ground and you may not have very good balance. So not being able to discriminate in that respect can cause a response that looks like a sensory processing disorder that is indeed a sensory processing disorder because the feet are not feeling. The interoception is the inside of your body, where your body is in relationship to other things, and how it feels on the inside. This is the one that's really the most difficult to, in my opinion, is to understand, is the interoception part of this, because there's nothing really physical to point to in that discrimination. The position and movement, this is vestibular. That's the inside of the inner ear when you have that, when your head is stuffed up and you feel off balance and you can't hear. So you can have a vestibular disruption that is physiological, and it makes it more difficult for you to have discrimination auditorily. And that if you, and then that experience can, if it goes on for a long period of time, then that experience can interrupt how you interpret information and interrupt how your brain then integrates information that you're receiving, and that can lead to a disrupted discrimination. Next slide, please. The sensory motor, this one is movement sequencing. It is how you put your movements together in an organized way, being able to pick up a pencil and hold it without adjusting it with two hands, moving the way that a ballerina moves, and she is practiced in that. And if you're not practiced in that, then it's very difficult for you. But we develop this little by learning to stand, learning to walk. This can also show up in postural control. If you have a sensory processing where you don't really understand where your body is in space, it can show up as falling over. If you're not receiving a sensory stimuli in your tush, if for some reason it doesn't interpret sensation, when a child is sitting at a gathering, they might flop over onto their friend, they might lean backwards, and then you give them the little bubble pillow that has the little nodules in it, and they sit on that, and they magically can sit upright. And that's because their body needed that sensory stimulation to be able to control their body. They needed to have that input. I mentioned that with being able to walk and having balance. That's that postural control. Next slide, please. Okay. So these are the big experiences that we have with sensory processing disorder. This is how they show up often in an early years environment. Overreacting or underreacting to sensory stimuli, sound, touch, taste, smell. Does anyone have a child that gets really out of sorts when there is an unexpected loud sound, or even a sound that they hear regularly but they interpret as being scary? Anyone?
Not really.
At my school, we have a few kids who are really sensitive to like construction sounds. And it's something we hear all the time. There's always construction happening here.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So when they are having that, how do you respond to that?
I just explain to them what's happening and what it sounds like, the different tools. So if it sounds like a drill to me, I'll explain to them that it's a drill and this is how it works and this is what it's doing. And most of the time it really helps and calms them down. I think part of the reason that works is we had someone come maybe a month ago to fix a few things around the school while we were outside playing. And those sounds were the same, but then they could see what I was talking about. Like, remember last week we talked about, you heard this and it sounded like a drill. See, he's using one now. So I think that helped a little. They seem to be a little bit less scared by it.
Yep. When they have context for the sound, they're able to integrate into that, they're able to see it. So this is also really important, is not one sense operates independently. They all operate together, and you can use one sense to counterbalance another one. So I had an experience with a child recently that we have someone who fixes things around the GON regularly, and his name is Aviv. The children love Aviv, and they shout Aviv every time he walks in. There are some children who are very sensitive to sound, and they see Aviv and they cry because he often will make loud noise. So, and one of the ways that you can support them, and I did this, and we're going to look at this, it'll be on the next slide, but we're not going to move on to that yet, is that you can let them know that it's coming. But this particular child is so sensitive that even letting her know that it's coming she just fell apart and was crying. So I actually had to physically co-regulate her and walk her through that. And we had to sing to regulate our breathing to get her to go through that. And then as it turned out, Aviv didn't make a loud noise. And so that was actually really helpful because he didn't do something that was going to be very scary to her. So that is the loud noise one is one that's quite common in an early years environment. Being easily overwhelmed by loud or busy environments. Is there anyone that is sensitive to busy environments and notice that children don't do as well when there's a lot of things on the floor or there's a lot of different patterns? Interesting. Interesting. That's often one that also comes up is that they notice that their children are a little bit more fussy when there are too many things on the floor. It's overwhelming to them and they can't focus on any one thing. And they find that they pick up half the toys and somehow the children are a little bit more calm. And that can be because a busier environment, they're just not able to integrate all of that information yet. Disliking or avoiding textures and certain clothing. For me, this is something that comes up every single year. There are children that just don't either like socks or they don't like tags in their clothes. Is that common for everyone else or is that just me?
It is, yeah.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Oh, good. Oh, good. I'm glad I'm not alone in that.
Yeah. Normally the socks, they don't want them.
Yeah, the socks.
Or yeah, or shoes. Sometimes when they come with shoes
Mhm.
from the house, they want to take them off.
So, and in the environments that I work in, we are no shoe environments. Is everyone what is the policy where you're working? Are you wearing shoes? Are you not wearing shoes?
We are not.
At
Yeah.
But
least,
some of the babies want to put them because maybe they saw another baby that has the shoes on, so they want, and if they want, it's okay. But we don't use shoes normally in the gun.
Yeah, I'm very much an advocate for either inside shoes or no shoes. Especially if you are in a city environment and you are walking to gun, for instance, through Tel Aviv or even through Jerusalem, there's a lot of things on the ground that they are walking through. And it's very easy to walk through gross water or waste from dogs or waste from birds. So I really like to just change the shoes, and children do have better balance and their feet develop actually better when they're not wearing shoes. And you can look into that as a study if you would like. There's a lot of information on to wear shoes or to not wear shoes. Sensory or seeking excessive sensory input, such as constantly touching objects or seeking movement. This goes back to that little pillow that I was talking about with the knobbies on it. Having that sensory stimuli then helps a child sit up, but also seeking sensory input. They're constantly touching. There are some children that need to bite. It's not common, but it is something that does. Like we've talked about before with atypical development, that there's comorbidities that go together, and needing that oral fixation, that oral stimuli, is one of the ones that people often notice when children constantly have their fingers in their mouth or their shirts in their mouths. Having difficulty with transitions and changes in routine. This can be a link to a sensory dysregulation. If they don't know what's happening and then there's something that is overstimulating them at that exact same time, it makes it difficult to move into that space. So this can show up and it's actually a sensory response. It's not necessarily a behavioral response. Going from indoors to outdoors, the light might be different for them. And so they might have, and they're not able to modulate quite yet the going from a light room to a dark room. But it can also be the sound. They're going out and it's a different kind of sound. So that transition isn't necessarily a behavior. It could be a sensory response. displaying poor motor control, coordination, and clumsiness. Sensory processing, if it's atypical and you have something happening within your ears, they could have poor balance. Or it could be that they don't have the sensory stimuli from their feet, and so it gives them poor balance. Not understanding where your body is in space can lead to poor balance. So there are many things that can go into this idea of being clumsy. Experiencing sensory related meltdowns and extreme emotional reactions. This is the big reaction to sensory stimulation. It is the child that screams that we were talking about earlier when there's a loud noise from a drill and they scream. They have a very, very big reaction, and it seems disproportionate. And it's important that we remember it just means that their brain is not yet able to modulate. Being overly sensitive to bright lights and visual stimulation. This goes back to having a busy environment and that visual stimulation. Also, I mentioned it earlier with strobe lights and people literally having a seizure. Their brain stops working because of a flashing bright light. Having difficulty with fine motor skills such as writing or buttoning clothes. That can be a tactile disruption in sensory processing, or it can be low muscle tone, or it can be low muscle tone, and so they haven't had the stimuli to develop the tactile sensitivity to be able to hold a pencil or to do a button. Being easily distracted or having difficulty focusing. Sometimes people want to say, oh, they're just all over the place. They're ADHD. It may not necessarily be that. It might be that they're so distracted by some sensory stimuli that they are not able to modulate in their bodies successfully, and it causes them to be very distracted, or they're looking for a way to ground themselves. They're going into sensory seeking because they have a need that's not being met, or they're trying to avoid something, and so it becomes that they seem distracted or have difficulty focusing. So again, we talked about this in atypical development, that these are all things that are comorbidity that kind of go hand in hand. It's not just one particular thing. Okay, next slide, Maytal. Okay, we're almost there. We're almost done. So this is, and you might remember this from the face-to-face. It just looks a little bit different on this slide. I took it from the slide of atypical development and I plopped it in here. I think I changed the colors a little bit. These are all of the things to do to support someone who is having a sensory dysregulation. They're not able to modulate. They're not able to interpret stimuli in a way that is typical. If you do all of these things, and they are all best practice, and the child is still regularly dysregulating, then it is absolutely time to consult a professional and get guidance. That collaboration is imperative when we're talking about children who are displaying behaviors that are atypical. They may not even rise to the level of being sensory processing disorder. Again, that's not for us to say, but I'm sorry, what? Oh, I'm not able to hear if you're talking, Farida. Maybe, can you put your question in the chat? Because I'm not able to hear you. Can anybody else hear and maybe let me know what's being said? Okay, so I put your question in the chat, Farida, so that we can answer the question. Let's see. I'm waiting to see if it slides up.
I don't think she's asking a question, it's just a background noise.
Oh, it's just background noise? Okay.
And
All
maybe
right,
turn off her microphone.
Yeah, a little bit of mute action might help there. So going back to all of these things that you can use to support someone who is having sensory dysregulation, support self-regulation and emotional well-being. That experience where that we had, was it Erin? Was that you that did that with the child and explaining what a drill is? And I did it with the child on our playground as well.
Yes.
That is a little bit difficult to do when someone is completely dysregulated because their body is so out of control, their brain is not really working. So that co-regulation, bring them back to earth and then have that conversation of explaining to them. Creating a sensory friendly environment. All of our environments should be sensory friendly. If you have someone who is sensitive, having a space for them to go and be able to calm down and to get away from the stimuli and so that they can regulate. I'm just picking out a few of them here. Establishing clear and consistent routines. This means that there isn't any surprises for sensory stimuli. So when you have a consistent routine, when there's sensory stimuli, then they are better able to manage that because they know what is happening in that moment, or you've prepared for them to have that happen. Do you have any questions about what to do, how to support, or what sensory processing disruption can look like? No? Okay. Next slide, please. And we've made it to the end. So I'm not sure if this video will play though, Maytal. Can you see if it'll play?
No, it's not playing. Can you tell me what video is and maybe I can get it on YouTube and share it?
Yes, it is Barry Brazelton.
Okay, 1 second.
And it usually shows up at the top of his YouTube. If you're going to YouTube.
Barry how do you spell Brazelton?
Brazelton.
Totally didn't get that, but whatever.
Oh, sorry. Did I go too fast?
Yeah, wait. Yeah. No, my brain is just really slow. All the lack of sleep.
Probably. Okay, let's see. If I find it, I can also send you the link.
Send you a link. Yeah, that's probably better.
Yeah, here we go. Okay, I think it's this one. Trying to send it from my phone. Share. Yep, it is this one. And
having come from a primitive look at babies in the 50s, didn't think babies showed us anything. They were lumps of clay. All the greats in past history said they didn't think babies were people until they were 3 or 4 months and had been shaped by the environment.
Okay, so I sent it on WhatsApp to you.
Okay, 1 second.
Yeah. I didn't send it in one of the groups. I just sent it to you.
Yeah, I see. Right. Can you guys see this?
I can't see anything.
Okay, start. 1 second. What about now?
Yeah, it's moving.
Yeah.
Yes.
Having come from a primitive look at babies in the 50s, where we didn't think babies showed us anything. They were lumps of clay. All the greats in our past history said they didn't think babies were people until they were 3 or 4 months and had been shaped by the
Sorry,
environment.
I can hear, but I can see nothing.
Yeah, the picture's not showing it. We can link it to the group and everyone can
watch
then
it.
can watch it afterwards, and I'll tell you the reason why I wanted to show it. So in the beginning, when he is talking about how he developed an evaluation for infants because they were not, they're not just lumps of clay. He shows how responsive caregiving helps children learn to interpret stimuli. And with the hearing aspect of it, they will be able to tune out something that they hear regularly. We as adults also are able to tune out things that we hear regularly. If it's something that comes into as a surprise, we're less likely to be able to tune that out. If it's something that we hear consistently, even if it's not happening all the time, but it is a sound that we're very familiar with that doesn't evoke fear, then we will be able to tune that out. That is, mothers are often able to know the difference between a play fighting and fighting, a crying, and even early caregivers. We kind of know the difference between a fussing and whining cry versus a child who is really in distress. And we may not even fully register. It's not going to distract us the same way that, like, in distress cry is going to distract us from whatever it is that we're doing and to get our attention. And babies' cries are naturally intended to annoy us because that means that we need to take care of them. So, but when we have responsive caregiving and we support them through their sensory experiences early in life, it makes it easier for them to develop those neural pathways and to have typical sensory development. So that's the end of it. And we did make it in an hour. Yay, despite all of the disruptions. I hope I've given you all of the information. If you have any questions about the quiz as you're going through, I am not going to give you the answer to the quiz, but I can tell you where to find it. I can tell you where to look. I can tell you what to think about, but I won't give you the answer. And if you do come in, I really wish this could have been done one-on-one because I really wanted to sit down and go through a case study. But we did, some of us did do it as a group of how to write a good case study. It is something that you're going to have to do a few times during the course. And I really wanted to give as much feedback as I possibly could at the beginning. And I do sincerely, once again, want to say that I'm very sorry we didn't set you up for success in being able to write a case study that was in a way that met the requirements. So I hope that this helps. I hope that taking the multiple guest quiz helps. Maytal is going to open that up for you. You will be able to take it.
I just want to say I'm going to send in the revision group. I'm not going to send it individually. I'll upload the slides. I'll send a link to the exam, which is also on the Moodle, but I'll also upload everything to the Moodle. So the slides will be also on the Moodle. I'll send them in the group as well. And you have 120 minutes to complete the exam, but it'll be open for the next week. So until less than a week. Wait, it's until the 23rd.
Until the 23rd, yeah.
Yeah, so it'll be open until Monday.
20.
Have
It's
until
only
Monday to complete the
one
exam.
attempt? Sorry.
Yes, it's only one attempt.
Okay.
It is one attempt. I am fairly confident that we had the atypical development, you've had sensory motor development, and now you've had the refresher and the recap on it. I'm going to say I'm pretty confident that everyone is going to at least pass. I think you're all going to do great. I don't think that it's going to be particularly challenging. There is information available for you. Like I said, the answer to most of the questions is inside of this recap. So have that available as you're going through it and go, wait, what did Tamara say about that? I am going to give you actually two freebies. One freebie. One of the answers is on the first page of the slideshow. So one of the answers is there. And where it says how to support all those little boxes, that'll also be information that you will want to have.
Okay, great.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
How's everybody feeling? Aside from like the war, how is everybody feeling about this?
Traumatic.
It's okay.
For now, I've been sleeping here at my husband's work for since the war started, so
Oy.
it's not actually comfortable. But we don't have a choice. It's safer here than in our building because it's an old building and we don't have the bomb shelter. And instead of running back and forth, we prefer to sleep here.
Yeah, and I'm sure that you are probably feeling very sensorially dysregulated. And as we talked about, when you're sensorially dysregulated, it's very difficult to focus. So well done on your effort in showing up for this, and set aside some time, maybe. I don't know where you can find someplace quiet to be able to sit down and do the quiz. I don't think it's going to take you 120 minutes. If it does, please let me know, because that's feedback that Sammy and I need to have. And if you don't feel like you were prepared for it, please again, let us know. It's really important to us that you actually have the skills. It's not about passing the test, it's about being more effective early years practitioners. So, with that, I will say goodbye, good luck, and I hope I see everybody very, very soon.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
Tamara. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Have a silent night to
Ah,
everyone.
please, a full sleep. Please,
A
God, a
full
full
sleep
sleep.
now, yes.
Hopefully.
At least 7 hours.
Oh, please, God. Yes.
Bye,
All right. Be well,
Bye
everyone.
bye.
guys.
I love you.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye. Be
you.
safe, all
Thank
of
you,
you
Tamara.
there.
Okay, we're going to leave. Here